بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا محمد سيد الأولين والآخرين وعلى صحابته ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين والعاقبة للمتقين. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما. اللهم افتح علينا فتوح العارفين بك يا فتاح يا عليم. وصل اللهم وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Welcome to another session on the breath of God, living up to our names. This is a most blessed endeavor that we are embarking upon, studying the names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and discovering ourselves in the process. And this is one of the most important subjects that a Muslim could put himself to the study of, because it reveals what the soul actually, what the secrets of the soul actually are, and what the potentialities of the soul are, and what the gifts of the soul are, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has gifted us this relationship to Him, by which we can relate to Him and by which we can know Him. Imam ʿAlī alayhi salam said, "Man arafa nafsahu faqad arafa rabbahu." Whosoever knows himself knows his Lord. And one of the secrets of that teaching is that the more we delve into our own attributes, the more we are in awe of those attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. For He is the one who has lavished us with His attributes, with His beautiful names and His attributes. And so we would like to continue with the next name in the list that is conventionally given, and that is al-Raḥmān and ar-Raḥīm. Al-Raḥmān and Rahim. And Rahman and Rahim, they come from the same root, right? So that's why we're going to treat them in the same session, inshallah. We could do one session just for Rahman and another session just for Rahim, but we want to combine them, inshallah, today. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, قُلْ ادْعُوا اللَّهَ أَوْ ادْعُوا الرَّحْمَنَ. Say, call upon Allah or call upon al-Raḥmān. أَيَّمَّا تَدْعُوا فَلَهُ الْأَسْمَاءُ الْحُسْنَى. Whatsoever name you call upon Him, by whatsoever name you call upon, He has the most beautiful names, subhanahu wa ta'ala. And al-Raḥmān, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, al-Raḥmānu عَلَى الْعَرْشِ اسْتَوَى. Al-Raḥmān assumed authority on His throne. He assumed the throne, and there's in the surah that we our version, if you will, of the Lord's Prayer, right? The Sab'a al-Mathani, in these beautiful verses of Surah Al-Fatiha, Allah Subhanahu wa Taala mentions Ar-Raḥmān and Ar-Raḥīm right after mentioning Allah. So we say Bismillahi Ar-Raḥmān Ar-Raḥīm. And if you're a Shafi'i, you actually believe that that's actually a verse in the Quran. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim in al-Fatiha is actually a verse of the Quran in the Shafi'i madhab. The Malikis don't believe that. The Malikis believe that al-Fatiha began with Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. And so they have a different numbering, because they both number 7, but they have a different numbering. The Malikis have a different numbering of the verses of Surah Al-Fatiha, so that they're still 7, because these are called as-Sab'a al-Mathani, the 7 most oft repeated verses. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts Ar-Raḥmān and Ar-Raḥīm right after His greatest name, Allah. Right, His greatest name, Allah, Ar-Raḥmān, Ar-Raḥīm. And out of the 99 names that are mentioned, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put Ar-Raḥmān right after Allah. Just like it is mentioned in that verse that I quoted, say, call upon Allah or call upon Ar-Raḥmān. And so this is the name out of the 99 names. Out of the 99 names, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala could have chosen any of the names, but Ar-Raḥmān and Allah and Ar-Raḥmān are the greatest of these names. They're the greatest of these names. And so Ar-Raḥmān, right, Ar-Raḥmān is distinguished from Ar-Raḥīm. One of the things that we believe in the Arabic language is that there's no two words in the Arabic language that mean exactly the same thing. And I gave some examples of that maybe a couple weeks ago when I mentioned the lion, and how the lion has 50 different names. And these names don't all mean lion, 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 right? They're not, but they're all aspects of the lion. They're all aspects. And so in Arabic, in the Arabic language, when you have words that have similar meaning They are similar, but they're not the same. No two words mean exactly the same thing in the Arabic language. And so when al-Raḥmān is mentioned and then al-Raḥīm is mentioned, these mean two different things. They mean two different things. And so we want to get into that today, inshallah ta'ala. What is al-Raḥmān and what is al-Raḥīm? Right? And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, let's go ahead and share with you our presentation today. And we are in al-Raḥmān here, right? Where is that? There we go. Ar-Raḥmān Ar-Raḥīm. Before we get into the distinction between Ar-Raḥmān and Ar-Raḥīm, we need to first describe and define what is Rahmah. What is this word Rahmah? It comes from three letters, Ra, Ha, Mim. And Ra, Ha, Mim, when they come together, they mean compassion and mercy and pity as well. And so Ar-Rahmah lughatan, right, in the language, Rahmah is what? It's riqqa and ra'fa wa ta'attuf. It is softness, right? It's kindness, and it is empathy, right? Softness mixed with kindness and empathy, all these together, right? All these together. So that's what it means in the language, and that's the context in which it is used. But istilahan, it's iradatu isal al-khair. But the technical definition for the word rahmah is to want good to come to another person. To want good to come to another person. And that will come in two different ways. And that is actually connected to the ishtiqaq akbar, right? The greater derivation of this word rahmah. That this word wanting good to come to others comes in two different ways. And you can give the example of the mother and her children for this. This would be a fitting example for the mother especially and her children, and the father as well, but the mother especially. And so the mother with the children will obligate those children to do certain things in order for them to reap the good behind those things. And she will also prevent or forbid those children from doing certain things in order to keep the good that is behind that prevention to come to them as well. So her engaging with her children is through obligation, and it is through prohibition, right? She obligates and she prohibits, and she also encourages and she discourages. Does this sound familiar to anyone, right? What I just mentioned, that she obligates and she forbids, and she encourages and she discourages. There are certain things that she says that you must do, and that is in order for good to come to you. There are certain things that you must not do, and that's in order for good to come to you. There are certain things that are recommended that you do, and that's in order for good to come to you. There are certain things that you are discouraged from doing, and that's in order for good to come to you. Does that sound remotely familiar to you? Does that sound remotely familiar? Because that is the entire Sharia. That is the spectrum of the entire Sharia. Our Sharia is based on rahmah, and that is the very definition of rahmah. The mother will prevent her children from doing something for their own good, and she will obligate them to do something for their own good. And the same thing applies for the entire spectrum of our Sharia, our blessed divine law, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands and where he forbids, where he encourages and where he discourages. And then there's a lot of room in the middle for just what is merely permissible for a person to do, right? And so the entire Sharia then, is in conformity to this definition of rahmah, to this technical definition of rahmah, which is to want good to come to others. But that's not just a technical definition that's related to Sharia. But let me rephrase that. But the technical definition that is related to Sharia is also found. It's also found in the etymology of the word rahmah itself. And if you take this word rahmah, ra, ha, mim, these three letters, and through what is called al-ishtiqaq al-akbar, right, metathesis. And metathesis means by changing the order of the letters. By changing the order of the letters, you get semantic fields of meaning that are related to that original root. So if we take rahama as the original root, and we scramble the letters, what we get is, if you look here, what you get here is rahama. You change that, you get harama, right? Harama. And then you change it again and you get maraha, right? Maraha, as you can see on the slide here. Rahama leads to harama, which leads also to maraha, right? That they're all related. These are all related through the roots. And so what is that semantic field of meaning that is created by rahma? If you change it to harama, harama literally means to forbid someone from doing something. That's literally what it means. To forbid someone from doing something in order to maintain their hurma, in order to retain their sanctity, right? In order to retain their sanctity, right? That good state in which they were created. In order to preserve and maintain that sanctity, you forbid them from doing certain things. And that's why Mecca is called, Mecca and Medina, they're the haram of the, they're the haram. And Jerusalem as well, right? These are the haram, right? The precincts around which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed, but in which no killing can happen, no arguing can happen, no fighting can happen, no bickering can happen. In other words, in order to preserve the sanctity of the place, there are a list of things that are forbidden in that place that are permitted in other places, right? That are permitted in, like you can kill an animal outside of the haram. That's permitted for you to do, but you cannot do so inside the haram, right? And so you get haram, which means to forbid. But also, if you switch the letters again, you get marah. And marah means felicity. It means happiness, contentment, delight, jubilee, salubriousness. Yeah, I went there, salubriousness. Yeah, that's what I said. I said salubriousness, officially, right? So this is marah, and that is the result, right? That is the result. If we go back to our metaphor, that is the result of carrying out our obligations. When we carry out our obligations, we feel this happiness about ourselves. We feel that, alhamdulillah, I'm accomplished. When you get up for Fajr and you pray Fajr on time, when you get up and do what is voluntary even, right? You feel good about yourself. Your faith, you delight in your faith. You begin to taste the delight of faith in your heart by fulfilling the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So on one hand, by fulfilling the command, you experience marah. And on the other hand, you retain your sanctity by not engaging in what is forbidden, right? So we find that even in the etymology of the word rahma, in the etymology, there is the meaning. Just the rahma itself is to want good to come to another person, but in the greater etymology of it, metaphysis we call it, in the greater derivation here, we find that meaning is still intact. Right, that meaning is still intact. And in the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and in his guidance, we have example after example after example of how he was rahma lil alameen, how he was this compassion for all of the world. And now let us get into al-Raḥmān and al-Raḥīm. These two words that come together, these two words that begin every single surah. We say Bismillah ar-Raḥmān ar-Raḥīm. And the reason that Bismillah ar-Raḥmān ar-Raḥīm is written in the Quran where it is not because these are verses of the Quran, but this was originally how we knew where one surah ended and the next surah began, right? It was because of Bismillah ar-Raḥmān ar-Raḥīm. So they would write Bismillah ar-Raḥmān ar-Raḥīm in order to distinguish one surah from another, that now you've finished one, you're beginning another. And there's 114 surahs in the Quran. 113 of them begin with Bismillah ar-Raḥmān ar-Raḥīm, but in Surah An-Naml, Bismillah ar-Raḥmān ar-Raḥīm is mentioned in the surah itself, where she says, Innahu, Bilqis, she says, Innahu min Sulaiman wa innahu Bismillahir Raḥmānir Raḥīm. So the phrase Bismillah ar-Raḥmān ar-Raḥīm appears in the Masahif 114 times, right? 114 times. And this, so this is the phrase, that is beginning and ending every surah. its beginning and ending every surah by the name of Allah, the compassionate, the merciful, the compassionate, the merciful, the compassionate, the merciful. Allah is reminding us constantly of His compassion and His mercy. And then if we go into these words now deeply, because it's in Surah Al-Fatiha, and we have all of these ways that we relate to these words through translation: the beneficent, the merciful, the compassionate, the merciful, the mercy, the merciful, the mercy giving, the dispenser of mercy, the mercy. We've got all these different ways that when we hear it, we're thinking about the translations that we've been exposed to. Right, the translations here that we've been exposed to, and we say, well, what is this word? Can we actually get a little deeper with these two words, especially because we recite it every single day in Surah Al-Fatiha: al-Raḥmān ar-Raḥīm, Bismillah ar-Raḥmān ar-Raḥīm, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, al-Raḥmān ar-Raḥīm, right? And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala takes the Basmala, Bismillah ar-Raḥmān ar-Raḥīm, and He breaks it up into the first two verses of Surah Al-Fatiha: Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, which mentions Allah, which is the first part of the Basmala, and then al-Raḥmān ar-Raḥīm in the second verse, al-Raḥmān ar-Raḥīm, which is basically a Bismillah ar-Raḥmān ar-Raḥīm retold. It's reconfigured in the first two verses of Surah Al-Fatiha, and we must be able to relate to these two words beyond just the translations that are really lacking. I mean, what is the difference between compassionate and merciful? And what is the difference? What is the difference? What do you actually feel? Right? But when I ask you to say Ar-Raḥmān, Ar-Raḥīm, take some time and say it to yourselves. Ar-Raḥmān, say Ar-Raḥmān, Ar-Raḥmān, Ar-Raḥīm, Ar-Raḥīm, Ar-Raḥmān, Ar-Raḥīm. Right? Say that to yourself. Allow those names to actually speak to you. Allow those names to address your hearts. Ar-Raḥmān, Ar-Raḥīm. Right? Isn't it so beautiful? Isn't it beautiful? Doesn't it sound so beautiful? Ar-Raḥmān, Ar-Raḥīm, right? And then if I ask you, Ar-Raḥmān, Ar-Raḥīm, Ar-Raḥmān, Ar-Raḥīm, which one of these is greater than the other? Right? Which one of these is great? Just by listening to it, just by the oral sound of it, right? Which is greater? Which is heavier in the balance? Right? Ar-Raḥmān, Ar-Raḥīm, Ar-Raḥmān, Ar-Raḥīm, right? Most of you would probably say, and maybe we can have some of you participating. Let's have some participation here. Which one is actually heavier, right? Ar-Raḥmān, Ar-Raḥīm, Ar-Raḥmān, Ar-Raḥīm, right? There's a little thought experiment here. Go ahead. I just want everyone to answer. Just everyone. Ar-Raḥmān, Ar-Raḥīm. So we have exactly. Okay. Now it's all coming in. Now we've got the overwhelming majority. There's only one person who said Ar-Raḥīm, right? And everyone else said Ar-Raḥmān. Right, and so Ar-Raḥmān, right? Ar-Raḥmān is the greater word. One, it has two extra letters, and the more you add to a word, the greater its meaning. And also, what was I about to say? It has two extra letters. I lost it. Anyway, Ar-Raḥmān and Ar-Raḥīm, they follow certain patterns, right? They follow certain patterns in the Arabic language. And I wrote them here for you. Fa'lan and fa'il, right? Fa'lan and fa'il, right? So fa'lan and fa'il. Fa'lan means it's reserved for words like غضبان, عطشان, جوعان, زعلان, right? These are words that describe the state of a person, right? The state of a person: hungry, thirsty, angry, upset, right? And so it describes the state. Whereas Rahim, right? Rahim, or this word fa'il, this morpheme, or the scale of fa'il, right? Fa'il assumes that there is a direct object. So, right, if I say Samia is the one who hears. Hears what? Hears something, right? And if I say basir, basir is the one who sees. Sees what? He sees something, right? So they assume a direct object, whereas fa'lan does not assume a direct object, right? It doesn't assume it. We're like hungry, right? Hungry is not a direct object. Upset, it doesn't take a direct object. Hungry does not take a direct object. It's describing the state of the person at a certain time. And so when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that He is Rahman and that He is Rahim, then He is compassionate in and of Himself, right? And He is compassionate with others, with the creation, right? So that's the difference in the meaning there, the difference in the meaning. And this is important because if you look at the tafsir, right? If you look at the tafsir of this, most of the mufassirun will tell you that Rahman is for, that this is His compassion for the entire creation, whereas Rahim is His compassion for the believers on the Day of Judgment. And that is a valid opinion, right? That is a valid opinion. In fact, that is the majority of the tafsir. They read like that. They say that Rahman is for all of creation, and Rahim is specifically for the believers on the Day of Judgment. However, Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyah took issue with this understanding, and I follow Ibn Qayyim on this. He said that Rahman is for His essence, while Rahim is for His action, right? And for His fi'al. And so what he means by that is that Rahman, He is Rahman because He is Rahman. This is He is Rahman because He is compassionate. In His essence, He is compassionate. In and of Himself, He is compassionate, right? But Rahim, right? Rahim, He is compassionate with His creation. And Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyah quotes a verse in the Quran, وَكَانَ بِالنَّاسِ رَحِيمًا, and He was Rahim with all people, right? With all people, not just the believers on the Day of Judgment, but with all people. And so Rahim is the compassion that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shows from His being Rahman. Rahim is the compassion that extends to the creation from His being Rahman. And so when we bring these two things together, these two words together, these two names together, these beautiful names, Rahman and Rahim. Rahman is, if you will, compassionate in essence, right? Compassionate with all. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. By the name of Allah, compassionate in essence, compassionate with all. Right? That's another rendering that's closer to Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyah's understanding of this, and I thought it was a very beautiful understanding. And so to that, I would like to just quote al-Qushayri here, who distinguishes between these two names in a very beautiful way. Al-Qushayri says, Bismillah, he says, Ar-Rahman is specific as a name and general in meaning. It is specific to Allah. No one else can have that name but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But it's general in meaning. While Ar-Rahim is general as a name, right? Anyone can be called Rahim. Yeah, the Prophet ﷺ was called Rahim. That he was called Ra'ufan Rahim, right? But no one is called Rahman though. And there's a lot of, there may be people on this, listening to this, whose last names are Rahman. Right? And so one of the things that a person may consider is just by adding abd to that. So you become Abd al-Rahman, right? The servant of al-Rahman. So he says, Rahman is specific as a name and general in meaning, while al-Rahim is general as a name but specific in meaning. Because He is al-Rahman, He granted everyone that which satisfies the outward. And because He is Rahim, He granted the believers success in the life of their inward. Thus, Ar-Rahman is by what facilitates, while Ar-Rahim is by what intimates. Facility is by the circumstances of compassion, while intimacy is by light. Ar-Rahman is by disclosing His majesty, while Ar-Rahim is by the subtlety of His nearness. Ar-Rahman is by what He entrusts of faith, while Ar-Rahim is by what He confers of experiential knowledge. Rather, Ar-Rahman is by what He confers of experiential knowledge, while al-Rahim is by what he bestows of his pardon. Rather, al-Raḥmān is by what he extends of his pardon, while al-Rahim is by what he lavishes of his pleasure. Rather, al-Raḥmān is by what he conceals, while al-Rahim is by what he blesses of the beatific vision and the eye witnessing, right? Seeing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Rather, al-Raḥmān is by what is supported by providence, while al-Rahim is by what is realized. And providence is for the deed, while realization is for the nexus, as the deed is for those resolute, while the nexus is for those who find. Al-Raḥmān is a beautiful way of understanding the difference between these two names. And you see how one of them, depending on the definition of one of them, right, that Ar-Rahman would be in compassion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who gives regardless of the response from his creation. And he says, Inna hadaynahu sabila imma shakiran wa imma kafura, that we have guided him to the pathway, and he will either be occasionally grateful or incessantly ungrateful. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Ya ayyuhal insanu ma gharraka bi rabbika al-kareem, O mankind, what has deluded you from your generous Lord? And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala continues to give and give and give, regardless of how his creation reacts. And this is from his rahmah as well. This is from his rahmah that he gives. And he gives in this life, he gives in the next life. And so one of the things to mention here in this, and I'd like to just quote the verse, now that we, let me go back to this. I'd like to just quote the verse here in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Zumar, Ya ibadi, alladhina asrafu ala anfusihim, la taqnutu min rahmatillah, inna Allah yaghfiru dhunuba jami'a, innahu huwa al-ghafur al-rahim. O my servants, qul ya ibadi, say, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is commanded to say here, say, O my worshippers, O my servants, who have transgressed against their own souls, do not despair of the compassion of Allah. Do not despair of the compassion of Allah. For Allah forgives all sins. He forgives the sins, all of them. For He is forgiving and compassionate. And in Surah Al-A'raf, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَادْعُوهُ خَوْفًا وَطَمَعًا إِنَّ رَحْمَةَ اللَّهِ قَرِيبٌ مِّنَ الْمُحْسِنِينَ. And call upon Him out of fear and out of desire. From fear, call upon Him in your moments of fear, call upon Him in your moments of desire, in your moments of aspiration. For the compassion of Allah is near to those who do well, to those who do well. And so this is the promise of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that rahmatuhu wasi'at kulla shay. His compassion has encompassed every single thing. And the oldest trick in the book of Iblis, right? Lucifer's oldest trick in the book is to get man to despair in the compassion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to cut us off from the compassion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is the oldest trick in the book. And so the promise of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is true, that if you think out of some warped sense of humility about yourself, right, that there's no way that I'll be forgiven for this, that there's no way that I even deserve it. You might actually believe that you'll be forgiven, but you don't deserve it. And because you don't deserve it, right, because you don't deserve it, you won't ask for it. And because you won't ask for it, your tawbah is delayed. All of this in order to keep you in a state where you are utterly worthless in your own eyes, right? Where you are utterly worthless in your own eyes. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has told us that if we did not sin, that He would destroy us and replace us with a creature that would sin just to ask for His forgiveness. That's the purpose of our creation. فَتَلَقَّى آدَمُ مِنْ رَبِّهِ كَلِمَاتٍ. And so Adam acquired words from his Lord, words of repentance. And so the rahmah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, by you saying and convincing yourself that Allah will not forgive me for what I've just done. Allah will not forgive me for years of neglect, or for years of abuse, or for years. You could have done egregious crimes. And that crime is not more expansive than the compassion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Prophet ﷺ, he made that very clear. And he mentioned that there was a man among Bani Israel who had killed 99 people. And he went to a scholar and said, is there any hope for me? And that scholar said, no, there's no hope for you at all. You killed 99 people, right? No, 99 people, you're damned. And so he killed them. He killed them, completing the circle. 100 people, 100 souls, right? He killed 100 souls. And he went to another scholar and he said, is there any hope for me? He said, of course, because your sinning is not greater than the mercy of Allah. However, you have to change your situation, and you have to go to another city where you are not prone to killing people, where the environment is different. You're in an environment that glamorizes and glorifies killing. And so you have to change that environment. So you put yourself in a better place. And so this man was on his way to that place, and he died on the way. He died on the way. And the angels of compassion and the angels of punishment, they met to try to take this man's soul. And they got into a back and forth about it. Do we take his soul gently, or do we take his soul with violence? And who takes his soul? And so they declared to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to order them, to command them who would take the soul. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, whichever of the two cities he was closest to, let that be the destination for him in the hereafter. In terms of if he was closer to the city from which he came, then he's going to hell. And if he was closer to the city to which he was heading, then he will go to heaven. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala stretched forth the earth in such a way as to make him closer to the city that he was heading towards. And so when the angels measured it, they found 1 footstep closer. He was halfway there, with 1 footstep closer to the city he was heading towards. And he is, inshallah, he is in Jannah. And inshallah, you and I will meet this man. We'll meet him in Jannah, inshallah. We'll actually meet with him. Right? And so this is an incredible teaching from our tradition, that Allah's compassion encompasses everything. It encompasses everything. And there's one thing that I wanted to mention here about the jadr of rahmah, and I skipped that here. So it's very important that we actually cover this, because Allah himself says in a hadith Qudsi, Allah says in this sacred hadith, that Ana al-Raḥmān, he says, Ana al-Raḥmān, I am the Lord of compassion. Ana al-Raḥmān. وَهِيَ الرَّحِمْ. And that is the womb, right? I am the Lord of compassion, and that is the womb. And they come from the same exact root. Rahman and Rahim, they come from the same exact root. فَمَنْ وَصَلَهَا وَصَلْتُهُ وَمَنْ قَطَعَهَا قَطَعْتُهُ وَمَنْ بَتَّهَا أَبَتْتُهُ or abatu. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, whosoever maintains relations with that womb, I will maintain relations with him. And whosoever severs or cuts off relations with that womb, I will sever and cut off my relations with him. And so this is the Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has actually, like, when we're talking about the roots of Arabic words and the etymology of Arabic words, this is not just a study that is outside of the guidance of the Prophet ﷺ and outside of revelation. The Arabic language was divinely revealed. The Arabic language is a divine language. And anyone who studies the etymology of Arabic words will know that. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions this. He mentions this in this hadith, that I am al-Raḥmān, and that is the Rahim. I derived for it a name from my names. He assigned to the womb a name that was derived from his name, al-Raḥmān. Right? Isn't that incredible? Isn't that incredible that this is not some ding-dong theory of Arabic didn't develop into a language from the ding-dong theory that, knock, knock, knock. Right? Knock, knock, knock. So that must be knock, right? Because that's what it sounds like, right? Ribbit, ribbit, ribbit. Oh, that's what we're going to call, you know, that's not the origin of the Arabic language. The Arabic language was placed, like one of the Orientalists said, there was an intellect behind this language. This language had an intellect behind it. And so he says, أنا الرحمن وهي الرحم. I am al-Raḥmān, and that is the womb. That is the womb. I derived for it a name from my name. And what does that mean for the woman, for the bearer of this womb? It means that she has, that through her womb, she is attached to the throne of God. For al-Raḥmān على العرش استوى. Al-Raḥmān assumed his throne. Al-Raḥmān assumed his throne, not any of the other names. And Allah didn't say Allahu ala al-arsh istawa. He said Ar-Raḥmānu ala al-arsh istawa. And Ar-Raḥmān is Allah, Allah is Ar-Raḥmān. But why not say Allahu ala al-arsh istawa? Why not say that? Why not say that? Because Allah contains all of the names. It contains all of the names. They all fall under Allah. So Al-Muntaqim, Al-Jabbar, Al-Qawi, Al-Mateen, Al-Aziz, right? All of these names are contained by Allah. And to imagine that these are the names that have authority on the throne, right? This would cause us to shudder. But when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says Ar-Raḥmānu ala al-arsh istawa and not Allah, then Ar-Raḥmān excludes the other names, right? It excludes the other names. That the compassion, the Lord of compassion assumed authority over his throne. The Lord of compassion. Let me be clear here. Allah is Allah, right? By whatever name we call upon him, Allah is Allah. And he will, from his throne, he decrees matters of difficulty as he decrees matters of ease. But all of those matters of difficulty and ease, they fall under the cosmic rubric of Allah's rahmah, whether or not we understand it or not. Dr. Omar has an incredible article on that called Mercy, the Stamp of Creation. And that would be required reading for this week. Now that we're doing Rahman and Rahim, I want everyone to read that article, Mercy, the Stamp of Creation by Dr. Omar Farooq Abdullah, in which he says that toward the end of that article, that all of the decrees of Allah, all of the events in the world, everything that happens before our very eyes, they fall under the cosmic rubric of the mercy and the compassion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, whether we understand it or not. And on the Day of Judgment, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is swift in punishment as well. And so Rahman does not exclude all of the names in the sense that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not decree through those names certain things to happen. But for those of us who sin, we are constantly reminded that Ar-Raḥmān has assumed authority over his throne. Ar-Raḥmān has assumed, and so the intimate space that name creates between the servant and his Lord is something that will constantly give us hope in this world. It will constantly give us hope that no matter what, no matter how neglectful I have been, no matter how wrong I have been, no matter how much I have transgressed against myself and my fellow human beings and my Lord, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's compassion is greater than anything that I can do. Right? And it's a constant reminder for us, Ar-Raḥmān ala al-arsh istawa, so that when we think about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we think about Ar-Raḥmān. First and foremost, not only, but first and foremost, because Allah has reminded us, and he has repeated that reminder throughout his book, and especially in this very important verse, Ar-Raḥmānu ala al-arsh istawa. And so one of the things about the womb then, about the woman and her connection to the throne, and that's not to say that men are not compassionate, but women have this unique, in general, right? In general, they have this unique standing with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this unique rank with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is a source, this is a major source of their strength in the world. that women have this strength that men have to learn how to acquire, right? That it's not just given to the men as it's given to the women in general. Now there are exceptions, of course, both among men and among women. There are men who are absolutely compassionate, and that the compassion is the greatest of their qualities. And there are women who are very, very let's say harsh-hearted, if you will, right? And that is that is really pronounced in their character and in their personalities, right? So you've met some women who are you've never had compassion from them, and you've met men that you've never known anything but compassion from them. So there are, but we're speaking in general, right? In general, the women have this gift from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala of compassion. She is the exquisite example in the world of compassion. Even in the animal kingdom, you can see it, that compassion exudes from her naturally. And there's something very beautiful about this, that womb is where the child is formed. And that womb is the child comes from that womb. And all children, when they're born, right? All children, when they're born, up until the ages of around 6 months or so, or even 8 months, sometimes even 10 months, they have this incredible scent, this incredible fragrance, right? You don't even have to give a child a bath. Directly after the child comes out of the womb, if you just wipe down the child and not even give that child a bath for an entire month or 2 or 3, never give that child a bath, that fragrance that child has on him from the womb, without even a bath, with no soap, with nothing that it is absolutely incredible. And it was so universal. The Prophet himself, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he picked up children, he would smell them, and he called children the flowers of heaven, the flowers of heaven. And when does that scent go away? Because that scent goes away. That child, once you introduce solid foods, that fragrance begins to dissipate. As long as that child is nursing from the breast, as long as that child is nursing, that scent stays with that child. And you can ask me, I've got 3 of them, right? I've got 3 of them. The month that we introduced solid foods to them, that smell dissipated. It went away, right? It went away. And you can bathe that child, or you can leave that child before the solid foods are introduced, and that scent, that fragrance will remain. That it exudes from that child, right? Who has just come out of the womb, and that womb is directly connected. There's a nexus between that womb and the throne of Allah. And that nexus is compassion. It is compassion, such that when the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, on one occasion, I don't know if I shared this story with you guys or not. I've been teaching a lot these days, so I'm not sure if you heard the story or not from me. But I'll give you the very fast version of it. There was a battle, and after the battle, there was a woman who lost her child. Did I share this story last week or the week before? Can one of you just tell me so that I don't end up repeating it? Did I share this story last week, the week before? No? Okay, so there was this woman looking for her child after a battle, and you just imagine these battle-tried warriors, these men in their 20s and 30s and 40s and 50s and 60s and 70s, right? Battle-tried warriors who had just stopped fighting are now, resting after this battle, and they see this scene where this woman is looking for a child and she can't find her. She's crying frantically, and the child, out of nowhere, after she's just going back and forth, have you seen him? Have you seen my child? Have you seen him? She thinks that she's lost her child. And all of a sudden this child's voice is heard, and she turns and she rushes in that direction, and she grabs her child and she kisses and hugs him, and she falls to the ground on this child. And these grown men who had just fought this battle began to weep. They begin to weep. They begin to weep. The Sahaba, we're talking about the companions, they begin to weep, They begin to weep. And the Prophet ﷺ sees this, and he says to them, do you think that this woman would ever throw her child into the fire? And they said, Ya Rasulullah, we could never conceive of such a thing. And so the Prophet ﷺ said, Allah is more compassionate toward his faithful servant than this woman is toward her child. Never forget that. Don't ever forget that. Allah is more compassionate toward his faithful servant than this woman is toward her child. Just never forget that. And so Allahumma salli wa sallim wa barik ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam taslima. And so when we talk about this attribute of compassion and how it's then exemplified, right, in the one who is sent to exemplify all virtues and all character traits that were worthy of praise, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, إِنَّمَا بُعِثْتُ رَحْمَةً وَلَمْ أُبْعَثْ لَعَانًا, he said, on the battlefield, he said, I was sent only out of mercy. I was not sent to curse anyone. And that's after they would ask him to curse the enemy on the battlefield. And he said, I was only sent out of compassion. I was not sent to curse anyone. And so we have to look at how the Prophet ﷺ embodied this trait in his words and in his deeds, inshallah. And then we'll close with our portion of this name. And so al-Raḥmātul Muhammadiyya qawlan, right? And this, the Prophet ﷺ, on one occasion, he is kissing his grandchildren in the presence of one of his companions. Excuse me one second. Allahumma salli wa sallim wa barik ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam taslima. I paused a second time because there's a whole thing that I wanted to mention, but I don't remember it. Pardon me for that. I almost remembered it and I forgot it again. Inshallah it'll come. And so he was sitting in the presence of this man who saw the Prophet ﷺ kissing his grandchildren. With one of them, al-Hussein, the Prophet ﷺ, when he saw al-Hussein, he would say, Hazukka, hazukka, taraqqa aina baqqa. Hazukka, hazukka, taraqqa aina baqqa. Right, from the compassion, right, that he had. Hazukka, hazukka, taraqqa aina baqqa. Hazukka means short and stout, short and stout. Taraqqa aina baqqa. Rise, right, rise to the level of the eye of the gnat. Or rise, O eye of the gnat, right? The gnat, G-N-A-T. Rise to the level of the eye of the gnat, like you're this little thing, right? This little creature walking around, running around, with all just bustling with personality, lungs of steel, right? And you're nothing but a little thing, right? You're just a little thing, right? So the Prophet ﷺ would kiss his grandchildren, right? And his stepchildren, he would kiss them. And this man, this companion, was in his home, and he said, you kiss your children? And the Prophet ﷺ said, yes, of course. He said, I have 10 children, and I never kissed a single one of them. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, أَوَ أَمْلِكُ إِن كَانَ اللَّهُ نَزَعَ مِن قُلُوبِكُمُ الرَّحْمَةِ. He said, what can I do for you if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has stripped from your hearts any compassion? If he has stripped compassion from your hearts, what can I possibly say? What can I possibly teach you about compassion if there's no capacity for it? Right? And so this is the teaching of the Prophet ﷺ about compassion, among others. We're just giving a very small example of how the Rahma al-Muhammadiyya was in his speech, right? In his speech, and what he would say to people to remind them of Rahma. And then the الرحمة المحمدية فعلا Muhammadan compassion in action has to do with the janaza of Abdullah ibn Ubay ibn Salul, right? The leader of the hypocrites. And I want to give this example here because it's a perfect example of his compassion. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed a verse in the Quran that they all knew, the companions all knew it. إن تستغفر لهم أو لا تستغفر لهم استغفر لهم أو لا تستغفر لهم إن تستغفر لهم 70 مرة فلن يغفر الله لهم. Seek for their forgiveness or don't seek for their forgiveness. Even if you seek for their forgiveness 70 times, Allah will not forgive them. What does that verse mean to you? If you hear that verse, right, and just assume you don't know the story, and you may not know the story, but what does that verse mean? What does that verse actually mean, right? Seek for their forgiveness or don't seek for their forgiveness. Even if you seek for their forgiveness 70 times, Allah will not forgive them. What does that mean? It means the deal is done, right? The ink is dry, the pens have been lifted, right? There's no way that Allah is going to forgive them. Seek for their forgiveness or don't. Allah will not forgive them, right? So what's the meaning there except Allah is not going to forgive these people, right? So there's no use in seeking for their forgiveness. There is no use. There is no use to seek. What's the benefit in seeking for their forgiveness if Allah is not going to forgive them? It's done. And when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed that to Sayyidina Nuh alayhi salam, when Allah said, إِنَّهُ لَن يُؤْمِنَ مِنْ قَوْمِكَ إِلَّا مَنْ قَدْ آمَنَ, right? That none of your people will believe except for those who have already believed. Nuh alayhi salam, in that moment, he said, in that case, destroy every last one of them and don't leave a single one of their houses, because if you don't destroy them, they'll raise a generation who will disbelieve in you, right? So don't increase them in anything except further loss. I mean, that's what that means. That's what that means, right? That no one will believe among them except those who have believed already. In that case, then khalas, we're done, right? And the same thing holds true for this verse that's directed to the Prophet ﷺ. Ask for their forgiveness or don't ask for their forgiveness. Even if you ask for their forgiveness 70 times, Allah will not forgive them. And so the Prophet ﷺ, he's about to pray over the corpse of Abdullah ibn Ubay ibn Salul, about to pray over his corpse. And Umar ibn Khattab comes to the Prophet ﷺ, stands right in front of him and says, Ya Rasulullah, أَعْلَى عَدُوِّ اللَّهِ الفاعل كذا وكذا يوم كذا وكذا تصلي على عدو الله تصلي الفاعل يوم كذا وكذا كذا وكذا. Are you about to pray on the enemy of Allah, on the soul of the enemy of Allah, who did on such and such a day such and such, and on such and such a day he did such and such, and on such and such a day he did such and such, and in such and such a day he did such and such? And the Prophet ﷺ is just smiling at Umar, listening to the entire. Umar is just mentioning infraction after infraction after egregious transgression against the Prophet ﷺ. One of the things that he said is "Sammin kalbak ya'kulk." That's what Abdullah ibn Ubay once said about the Prophet ﷺ. Astaghfirullah al-azim, hashahu. He said, fatten up your dog and he'll turn around and eat you. That's what he said about the Prophet ﷺ. Right before he started spreading the rumor about Sayyidah Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha. And so that's the man who died. That's the man who died. And the Prophet ﷺ was about to pray over his corpse. And Umar ibn Khattab said, how can you and so the Prophet ﷺ said to Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anhu, أخر عني يا عمر, get behind me, O Umar, فإني خيرت فاخترت, because I was given the choice and I have made my choice. What choice were you given, Ya Rasulullah? What choice were you given? Where's the choice in that verse? Seek for their forgiveness or don't seek for their forgiveness, Allah will not forgive them. That's a choice? That's a choice. Every Arab knew what that verse meant. Every Sahabi knew what that verse meant. That's why Umar radiallahu anhu was so bold in standing in front of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Later on, he says, I was surprised at my own boldness in front of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And so they all prayed that janazah over his dead body. They all prayed that janazah. And where's the choice? There's no choice in that verse. There's no choice there. Every Arab knew what that meant. Everyone knows what 70 times. It means 100 times. In our idiom, like you could tell me 100 times. I'm still not going to, that's what didn't I tell you 100 times? No, you didn't tell me 100 times. You might have told me 7 times, maybe 4, maybe 8 times in all the years that I've known you. It definitely wasn't 100, right? So this means that just as it's innumerable, right? Innumerable. Ask for their forgiveness an infinite amount of times. Allah will not forgive them. So where's the choice there? Now the Prophet ﷺ, do you see the compassion that is Muhammadan compassion, what it is? Muhammadan compassion is that which forces an interpretation. It forces an interpretation. The Prophet ﷺ interpreted the verse literally, while he knew exactly what it meant. But he interpreted it literally in order not to have any door for him asking for compassion to come to Abdullah ibn Abi Salul. He wants to ask for the compassion. Allah will bring that compassion down or not, but he will ask for that compassion. That's the compassion of the Prophet ﷺ against a man who spread these rumors against his own wife. I mean, this is like, I don't care what you and I have been through. We have not been through what the Prophet ﷺ has been through. And he experiences his tribulation and the tribulation of everyone in his ummah. He experiences that. And that's why he says that the prophets are the ones who are tried the most by their people. The prophets are the ones who are tried the most by their people, right? Because they experience all of our tribulation and all of our affliction, all of our pain. And so the Prophet ﷺ forced that interpretation in order to be able to ask for the forgiveness for Abdullah ibn Ubay ibn Salul. And then comes the next verse. There's another verse that's revealed. Do not ever stand at the grave of any one of them who has ever died, the hypocrites, right? Because they have disbelieved in Allah and His Messenger. Right, so that verse is now coming down. There's no way you can interpret that. You can't force an interpretation with that. But we see that the rahmah, the compassion of the Prophet ﷺ, we see what that is. The compassion of the Prophet ﷺ knows no limits. It knows no limits. And we'll talk about that more. So nasibul ibad, this is our portion now in closing. Our portion of rahmah is the first hadith that is ever taught. Which is called al-Hadith al-Musalsal bil-Awwaliyya, right? And I relate this hadith to you. This is the hadith that every scholar will relate to his students as the first hadith that you will actually receive from your teacher, right? The first hadith that you will receive from your teacher is this, is what is known by al-Musalsal bil-Awwaliyya. And I relate this hadith to you on behalf of my teachers, on behalf of their teachers, on behalf of their teachers, on behalf of their teachers, all the way back to Abdullah ibn Amr ibn al-As, who heard the Prophet ﷺ say, al-Rahimuna yarhamuhum al-Raḥmān, irhamu man fil ard, yarhamkum, or yarhamukum man fis sama. The compassionate people, those of compassion, shall be shown compassion by the Lord of compassion. Show compassion to all who are on the earth, and the one who transcends his skies will show compassion to you. This is the hadith that is our portion of this name, right? That if we want rahmah in our lives, we must be ruhama to the others. If we want to manifest this name, if we want to know what is my portion of this name, then turn toward all of the creation with rahmah. Turn toward all of the creation with compassion, wanting good to come to our enemies, wanting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to guide our enemies to the fold. As the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, Allahumma mahdi ahad al-Umarain. Oh Allah, guide one of the two Umars, either Umar ibn al-Khattab or Amr ibn Hisham. And here comes Umar ibn al-Khattab, who was an enemy. And the Prophet ﷺ, when the people came and they said, Inna dawsa qad abat, the tribe of Daws has rejected you. فَادْعُ اللَّهَ عَلَيْهِمْ. So ask Allah to curse them. He said, and he turns toward the Kaaba with his hands raised, and the people said, إِنَّهُمْ قَدْ هَلَكُوا قَدْ أَهْلَكُوا, that they're going to be destroyed now. He's turning to his Lord, towards his Lord, facing the Qibla now. They're going to be destroyed. And the dua of the Prophet ﷺ was answered. The dua of the Prophet ﷺ is answered. And so what does he say? He says, Allahumma hdi dawsan wa'ti bihim. Oh Allah, guide the people of Daws and bring them to our ranks. Bring them to our ranks. And one of those people of Daws was Abu Huraira, ad-Dawsi. Abu Huraira belonged to that tribe. Abu Huraira ad-Dawsi, right? And so this is our portion of it, to turn toward all of creation with nothing but compassion in our hearts, for the young and for the old, for the enemy and for the friend, right? For those with whom we agree and with those with whom we disagree. Just by being compassionate, though, it has to be principled compassion. Our compassion is principled, right? That compassion should never lead us to compromising our religious principles, right? That we turn toward other people in their time of need, and we understand and we empathize with the needs of others. But when those alliances call upon us to compromise our religious principles, then our compassion must be between commanding the right and forbidding the wrong. That's the Sharia there. That's the Sharia. Al-amru bil ma'ruf wal nahy anil munkar. Both commanding the right and forbidding the wrong is the very definition of compassion. That is the very definition of compassion, is to bid people to that which will bring them good, and to forbid people from that which will prevent that good from coming to them. Right? We have to understand that we are principally compassionate, not idealistically compassionate. Our compassion doesn't follow the ideals of today and the trends of today. It follows the principles that are laid down in our Sharia. وَالْعَصْرِ إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ لَفِي خُسْرٍ إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد في الأولين، وصل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد في الآخرين، وصل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد في الملأ الأعلى إلى يوم الدين، وسلم تسليما كثيرا كثيرا.